Started. I'd like to welcome all of you who will be attending today for this exciting event for Friends of Figma, the world tour that we are having. Since the this morning we have a series of events that we are doing from different chapters all around the world, from different Friends of Figma communities that we have from Sydney to India, Asia, and other countries that will be hosting as well. So this is a 24 our online event that we'll be doing. So with this event, we also have in parallel the Pune chapter, the India Pune chapter event as well. So I'd like to introduce myself, Divyansh Patel. I have been working as senior product designer at Lowe's, and I'm also like a Figma community advocate since more than 5 years. Started with the India region, then we tried to have a different communities in different cities as well. So I'm currently hosting for the Ahmedabad region, and also a product and ambassador since 5 years. So for to give a brief around World Tour 2025, which is like built by community, the local communities that we have in each cities, in each countries, a virtual celebration of the Friends of Figma community around the world. We wanted to have a community which also felt inclusive with all the cities that participate in their own language as well. So many different chapters are doing their events in their own language, and you can also go to the website and try to participate in others as well. Designed to spotlight the voices, ideas, and creativity. So this chapter is designed for the portfolio design that you do, right? So how to design those case studies, and what is the fundamentals that you need to know, and what are the tips and tricks that you can use for make those engaging case studies. So we have Anfisa today to provide and help you around that. And I've been following Anfisa with her workshops earlier as well, and I think she has wonderful knowledge, and as well as she will be able to guide you on those points. So today's speaker we have Anfisa. She's working as a senior product designer as MEWS, and she's also having her own community called Into UX Design, where she also has different workshops and different sessions regarding designs in general, as well as the other like if you have any issues with portfolio, she also conducts various sessions and workshops around that, how to design your portfolio, as well as case studies and other in general UX events for various topics. So today we have the topic of the key for creating and engaging case studies. So I'll hand over to you, Anfisa, to get started.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So, welcome everyone. Super excited to meet you here. Hope you're doing great. And if you have been joining other sessions, hope you're having a really enriching and insightful day. Today, we are going to talk, Divya is already mentioning, let's talk about portfolios, the topic that bothers all of us because we all need portfolios, especially in the current market landscape. So, without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. Maybe I'll ask you a couple of questions during the talk, but I'll start by telling. Okay, let me actually switch my screen. I'm going to double check if you guys can see my screen. Divi, can you make sure that it follows me, because I switched the slides, but I still see this in the previous slide. Yeah, okay, perfect. Now you can follow me, and now we can see the story. Great. So I will start from telling a little bit about my story and how I arrived to building case studies or portfolios that actually make a cut on the current market. And then I'll share a few tactics and examples on how you can do it too. So starting from my story. Back in 2020, beginning of COVID, imagine myself sitting in the room preparing for a case study presentation. I was given the home tech task to design some product for a job I was looking for. By the way, in that case, in that particular moment, I just lost job, and it was beginning of COVID, and so everything was very unstable. Everything was looking very, I guess, yeah, kind of just look very panicky. And so I was very panicking when it comes to designing this case study as a home tech challenge. I really needed a job. By the way, I was also literally getting my home mortgage, so I really needed a job at the moment. And so as I received that prompt, I started working on that homepage challenge. And obviously, I mean, as I started giving the presentation in that evening, by the way, it was 10 p.m. in the evening, I was very tired. I was working the whole day. I needed to sound confident, like I know what I'm presenting, what I did, except that I did not. I had a hiring manager who was like an Italian woman. She was very bold. She was basically drilling me with her look and didn't make me feel easy. But since we are in the presentation, I'm presenting my home tech challenge with a case study, and obviously I started telling my story. So I started by explaining, this is a real example of what I presented back then. So I started by telling what's my process looked like. Since receiving that prompt, here is my process outlined. They gave me like 10 hours to work on this. I broke it down into certain activities. And then I started walking the hiring manager through the assumptions I have been starting this project from. Then I started going through a bunch of notes that I have had through the interviews. Then I started outlining the target users for that task. Then I started explaining all the jobs to be done that I found from the research. Then I started talking about feature prioritization, right? Because, yeah, who doesn't? And then, of course, I started telling, look, I looked into this process. Turns out I cannot do everything I wanted to. I iterated on my process. Now, instead of 11 hours, I spent 13 hours on this challenge. And then I started going through, we are designers, right? So we have to solve problems. And I started going through the pain mapping I discovered, and then brainstorming, and then how might we like automate some of those brainstorming. So I started doing matrices, like prioritization matrices for all the ideas, because who doesn't do this for 8 hours or 10 hours home tech challenge? And then for a second, I take a pic at the hiring manager, that Italian woman who was drilling me with her look. And her face says it all. It was boredom with the capital B. And in that particular moment, I realized I'm actually failing. In that particular moment, I realized that my presentation does not make a cut, that she's bored, she's not following, and that whatever I'm going to say further will not rescue me. So I had like a little traumatic experience in a way. But let's move forward 2 years later. So first case, it was me in 2020, and 5 years ago, beginning of COVID. In beginning, or basically, yeah, something like beginning of 2020, 2 years later, I already had a job. Everything was fine. And I started noticing, I mean, the tech crisis started happening. So right after the COVID, you might have all feel it, experience. Some of you might have went through this. A lot of layoffs started happening in the companies. And amid all this tech crisis, I started receiving a lot of portfolio review requests with different mentees and with different designers I've been helping before. And so I started helping people to review their portfolios because they were looking for jobs. And first time I'm joining the portfolio review, the designer, by walking me through their process, telling me what they did. So they're telling me about the problems they have solved, the user interviews they have had, the personas they have outlined, wireframes, prototyping, testing, you name it. As I walked through a couple of more of those interviews or portfolio reviews with designers, I started realizing there is actually a pattern that suddenly a lot of designers turned out to be following the same pattern, same process reporting sort of pattern of telling about their work. And that's how a lot of hiring managers go through this. I mean, if I had, for example, I didn't count, but for example, I had like 30 portfolio sessions. Imagine hiring managers going through hundreds of those portfolios. And you can only imagine how following that pattern of telling the story, of telling the things you have followed, the details you have uncovered, might just not engage them. They have too many of those portfolios to go through. And the attention, the need to stand out and to kind of fight for that attention is as real as it never been before. So this is how a hiring manager sees your portfolio if you focus on the process you have been following. Turned out I was not the only one to fall under that trap, and that many of us are kind of became the slaves of our process. And we have been preaching the process for so long. It was a safe path. If we knew the process, we knew what we were doing. And it was fine for a couple of years while the status quo was different. However, with the market that we are experiencing today, with the tech crisis that is very, very slowly picking up, it's still not there, nowhere near it was in 2021 or 2020, for example. So while the market is still very slow and AI is rapidly changing the status quo, we cannot follow that safe path of telling our story if we want to stand out, if that's your goal, of course, which I think it should be. So the truth is that while we are telling that reporty case studies in a way that tells a beautiful story that, for example, you started from insights, you did learn something, you did some explorations, here's a result and happy ending, the reality, and hiring managers know this better than all of us, the reality of every design project is never this shiny. 99% of the time, most likely you have experienced some tensions, you have experienced some tweaks, you have experienced some roadblocks, or you have had to pivot from the first iteration, right? So you most likely did not have a straight path to achieve certain results. And if you are not telling that reality to the hiring manager, you're optimizing for that safe path that, again, hiring managers are bored to read and don't feel engaged with. So the chapter number 2, this was my personal story, but in the chapter number 2, I actually want to switch, wear a different hat. Let's focus on the hiring manager right now. So how does the hiring manager today look through the portfolios, and how do they basically look for the right candidate in their teams? Let's build empathy for the hiring manager for a second. So imagine you're a hiring manager and your calendar looks like this. It's a reality based on real stories. Every hiring manager I showed saw this slide told me that they feel seen. And it's true. Like your time is absolutely like free time is non-existent. You have no time to eat or to do whatever your personal stuff. So hiring managers are very busy today because, again, during the COVID time or post-COVID, a lot of the companies had to do the restructuring, let's put it this way, and they fired people, and then the teams were very, very stretched thin. Hiring manager had to handle sometimes hands-on work, strategy work, hiring, planning, communication. Hiring managers were under a lot of pressure, still are, by the way. And suddenly, good news, hiring manager has a green light for hiring the senior designer to join their team, right? So me as a hiring manager, I'm happy, I'm excited, I can hire the designer in my team. I will have extra people to solve all the problems we have on the plate. Great. And if you're a hiring manager in a certain team, you probably know that you're looking for a certain level of the experience, and then probably also you are looking for certain criteria, right? For example, experience in fintech or understanding worked before in the scale-ups or something like that. So you have certain idea about who you're looking for. Now, you posted a job opening, and suddenly overnight you wake up and you have 500 portfolios to go through. Now, if you think about this calendar and 500 portfolios that you have just received, there's absolutely no way for the hiring manager to look effectively through every single candidate. So in the market where there is much more supply than demand. So demand meaning, for example, one job for, I don't know, 500 people. This is like random numbers. But anyways, point is that you have a lot of designers and very little jobs. And when hiring manager posts the job and they receive so many portfolios, then you have to understand what kind of experience you're designing for. Your portfolio is an experience you're designing for this hiring manager who has to look through 500 portfolios. So again, playing safe is not an option for you. You have to look for ways to stand out from that market, from the crowd. And so how does the hiring manager reviews the portfolios? Well, they are not really reading your portfolio. And we have this habit from, I would say, 5 years ago to write big reports about what we have learned, all the details, literally what I was sharing in my example 5 years ago. And the truth is that nobody has time anymore to read, especially when you have 15 minutes to review 100 portfolios. You literally are scanning through everything. You are optimizing for the first impression, and the first impression needs to be very, very slick, very to the point, and tell exactly what you can offer to this team or to this hiring manager. And so the secret to engaging case studies, I'm actually going to open it up with a little quote that I really like. And the quote goes like, "Tell me the facts and I will learn. Tell me the truth and I will believe it. But tell me the story and it will live in my heart forever." So the secret is actually pretty simple. The only way to stand out on the market today is by telling scannable and good stories. Scannable is the keyword because, again, remember, we don't have time to read your case studies. So now, in the chapter number 3, let's also talk about how do we build and find the good story. And to do that, I'm not going to go into examples straightforward. I would like to zoom out and think about a different perspective. So for a second, let's forget about portfolios. Let's forget about your case studies, your design projects. Let's think about like general idea. How do we stand out typically? So for the sake of a perspective, let's imagine that you're now traveling and you're walking down the street in the Romania. Like you're traveling basically, and you're noticing a very lovely bookstore, and you're a book geek, so you decide to enter it and find a nice souvenir, a book to take home. How do you usually do this? Maybe you're a designer, so you like to read design books, or maybe you are I don't know, you like the novels, and you would like to find the novel to take with you, right? So basically, we usually start by looking for the right section, right? Am I in the right section? Am I looking for the right design book, for example? The next thing that usually stands out is the book cover on the shelf, right? The book covers is something that grabs our attention. We have hundreds of books on the shelves. Which one do we pick? Something that stands out visually. Then we read the title, right? Because, well, we don't want to take the cookbook if we're looking for a design book. So we are being hooked or interested or intrigued by the title of that book, if it sounds interesting. And then, of course, before taking it to cashier, you probably want to kind of scan through it real quick. You will not stand there and start reading the book from page 1. Probably you don't have time for this if you're traveling. But what you will probably like to see is like a quick scan on the book. What is it? What's inside? Will I find something interesting inside of that book? And you sometimes also go and check the table of content to kind of scan through the titles, to kind of see if this book is going to teach me anything or is going to give me whatever I'm looking from this book. And so if everything is checked, if every single box was checked through this journey, success, congratulations, your book was picked up and will be bought at the cashier. It's kind of a very simple example of the bookstore, right? When you have a bunch of books on the shelves and you are looking for the right book. The same applies in our portfolios. Your portfolio has to have a bio. It needs to say, are you relevant to this company? If you're looking for a senior designer, but this designer is, for example, 2 years on the market, most likely they're not going to fit into the needs of the company. And then as the hiring manager scans through the case study thumbnails, are they cover worthy? Are they hooking an attention? Are they looking really interesting that you have no option but to actually go and check it out? And very often from the thumbnails, you can say if this designer cares for details, cares for the experience, or it was not very well thought through for the details. And then, of course, we read the titles because, well, we need to find the right. For example, the designer has 3, 4 projects, or even 4, or sometimes they have 10 projects, which I don't suggest because it's hard to choose. But anyways, let's imagine the designer have a couple of projects. You're reading and comparing which kind of story you would like to read, because I don't have time to read 4 or 5 case studies. I'm going to read 1, maximum 2. And so your title needs to be relevant to their company, to their needs. Finally, as they open the project, they quickly read an overview, and the overview needs to make sense. It needs to tell what the problem you were solving. If you throw them a wall of text with a bunch of unnecessary details, nobody will have time to read it, and chances are they will not read your case study at all. They will just scan through the pictures. And finally, again, remember, we're optimizing for quick scanning. What you're interested in doing is to tell good titles in the story. good titles in your case study, because those titles, if they will be reporty, like I did personas, I did the explorations, I did, I don't know, for example, the like whatever A/B testing, then it will just focus on the process. Again, the process that hiring managers knows by heart. Instead, we want to optimize for titles that tell something interesting, intriguing, and invite to read further, right? So we want to make sure that table of content of your case study leads with an insight, leads with interesting content rather than the checked boxes in the double diamond process. Alrighty. Finally, let's talk about the storytelling in our portfolios. So how does the storytelling work in our portfolios? Typically, high level, a little bit of theory, there is this notion of story arc. It's a fundament for any story, be it in music, media, literature, advertisement, you name it. And the same story arc is relevant also for our portfolios. And by nature, story arc is divided by three parts, or three parts basically. Typically, start, middle, and end. Now, typically in the middle, this is where the climax is, right? So the start, you're telling what's happening. In the middle, you're telling how you went through it and what problem you have occurred, and then how you ended up with the result, right? The classic story. Now, how does it fall under the portfolios? If you apply the portfolio sort of story, it will start with obviously problem, then the steps you took or lessons you have learned through the research, what you have explored, the most interesting part for the hiring managers, and of course how you validated it and how did you finally arrive to certain results. If you just have your titles that tells problem steps, insights, exploration, validation, that's the boring story. Nobody wants to read this. If that story is so predictable, there is nothing to be learned there. So that's, remember, why we need to have catchy titles in your case study. So I would actually walk you now through a couple of examples for each of those story stages, starting from context, then to the middle, and then of course to the end. So let's start from the context. There are a couple of elements or ingredients to have a good context. First being your hero image, remember, your book cover. Will you take that book from the shelf, or will it not be interesting at all and you'll just skip it? And here are a couple of examples that we can look at. So there are two thumbnails for this case study. Imagine this is the visual for your case study, a thumbnail. Both of them look sleek, white, apple, clean, right? So following the guidebook. But one of those examples actually do not work. I wonder if you know which one, but I don't think we have time to do the questions in the chat. However, I hope you guessed right that example B works and example A does not work. And the reason why is because the example A is not optimized for a good scanning experience. It has a lot of screens, a lot of details that I have no clue about. They're tilted, so you're asking the hiring manager to tilt their head and start trying to understand something, but yet it's still very hard to read because it's in perspective. And so basically, it's not telling me what's inside. It doesn't tell me the story. What will I find inside of that project? On the opposite hand, you have the thumbnails that is very minimalistic and literally have one element, a card. But with that card, you can already understand the content. It already tells me the story, what you will see inside of that project. You can quickly put two and two together and see the top apply probably job search in context. You can then see that this is a role. Okay, so this is something regarding the job hunting design. Job board design or something like that, right? Literally, with one element, you're already implying a big context of what is the story about. So sometimes less is more. And while they're still doing some tilt, which by the way, I really don't like tilts because you're still asking me to move my head, this tilt is a safe one because I don't have to stretch too much to try to read this, right? While this one, I would have to. Think about user experience, basically. Project titles. Now, we have also covered that to stand out from the shelf. You have to have a catchy title. Which of the projects that you have in your portfolio will be relevant to the hiring managers you're targeting? Every company comes with certain project dynamics, with certain challenges, with certain set of collaborations, etc., right? And your title is literally implying the context in which you worked. And your title has to tell me what did you experience in your past role so that it made you relevant to apply to our company. For example, scale up, startup, enterprise company, etc. Now, two titles here. One leads with the name of a company, the second leads with a type of a work you did. I hope you got it by now, but title B works better. The reason why is because NCR Corporation, not many people know what it is. If you do know, let me know in the chat. I worked in this company, but I don't know anyone who actually knows this company. And hiring managers probably also don't, unless, of course, you apply to a very specific sector of or industry. And it's a very popular brand there, so everybody would know, for example, consumer-based products like, I don't know, the companies like, I don't know, Meta or whatever. Like everybody would know certain consumer-based products. But if it's a niche B2B product, you really, especially B2B products or startup products that nobody knows about, don't mention those names in the titles because nobody understands them. And again, you're creating an experience for them to scratch their head and try to think, huh? Like what what am I going to get inside of the project? So instead of focusing on just name and then the subject, but don't explain or imply what did you did inside, what was the interesting thing that you have experienced or explored inside during this project. Instead, try to think on telling an interesting hook kind of capturing story. So I usually suggest to follow a simple formula. Start with challenge, mention the context or subject, and then definitely include the impact. Even if the impact is not measurable, it's normal, not every, especially startup, has measurable impact. You still would like to have a qualitative value. What did you achieve with this project? Whose life did you make better? Who did you improve something or unlock something? Yeah. What did you improve with your project? What was the intention behind this project? In this case, we are looking at the title that says redesigning point of sale experience for 1.2 daily active waiters. What it tells or what it implies is that redesigning means there was before and probably after. Okay, that is clear. So there was something you analyzed and you have improved based on some data. The intention and the whole design process already becomes much more clear by saying what you did there. Oops, sorry, previous. POS experience explains the context, so that's an industry, and if you're applying to certain industry, would help there. And then 1.2 daily active waiters very clearly communicates that redesigning for a lot of daily active users means that a lot of people rely on the system, they rely on certain mental model patterns, and you are changing, you're breaking their habits. So how did you overcome that challenge? The whole daily active users is a hook here because it implies that I had to do some extra job to figure out how to redesign something without frustrating the current users. So how might you now, thinking about your case studies and projects, how might you tell an inviting story with your title? What's an interesting story that that you have worked or context that you had worked with that will be interesting for hiring managers to read? And finally, the project overview. So when you click on the project, you already know the visual, you understood a bit of like visual story, you know the title, what's inside. Now, project overview. Project overview is also quite critical, and we often overlook this. But the reason why it is critical is because if you don't hook their attention, if you don't tell them concisely enough what they will learn in this project, chances are they're skipping it and just checking your images. Again, they don't have time to read. That's not their problem. It's your problem that you didn't optimize it for quick reading and capturing their attention. Okay, so here's two examples. One leads with the process. Second leads with like concise, again, extending on that formula of what is it about, what's the challenge, and what's the impact. You can use the same formula or optimize it to whatever other way to quickly explaining what's the gist of your project. And again, in this case, what I was trying to mention here is that this is the context. I worked for the family of products that has a strong legacy of 20 years. A problem, basically on-premise approach, not scalable. Impact, designing a universal design system, right? Very kind of concise, and by telling me 20 years of history made it unscalable, I fixed it with the universal design system. That's a very, very quick point. What are you getting inside of this project? Whereas if you start by explaining the whole background, problem statement, etc. You're literally creating a research paper for them, and they don't have time to read that. And even now, I would say in the current market, the status quo is changing every day. So I would even kind of assume that this is a lot of information. This is a lot of reading. And I would even consider literally shrinking it even more. Like literally 1 sentences per each. That's it. And lead with visuals. Visuals are more important today. Okay. And now let's go on to the project story. So how are we captured, let's imagine we have succeeded and we have captured their attention. They liked our visual in the thumbnail. They have understood what's the story about with the title. We have quickly expanded on what's this project about with the overview. Now let's actually finally start focusing on that project story. So the project story we have established already has a bit of the process, but more importantly, it has not just process, but it has insights, explorations, culmination moments, critical moments, for example, where something doesn't go right, or you have a conflict, or you have whatever, something goes out of the window. That's the interesting, meaty part of the story that you want to focus on here in the story. So we will break it down into 4 tiny sections. First, remember that hiring managers don't stay in that bookstore and start reading the whole case study from page 1. They're scanning. They're scanning to try to understand, did you just report the process and it's a boring project, you played safe, or you did spend time and made this experience easy to understand for me. You focused on the titles. They're scanning the titles, and you want to make sure these titles are telling the story. Here's an example. Imagine that you bought that book, right? You bought that book and then like you basically bought that book in Romania, you brought it home, now you're at home having a nice cozy drink with a night evening light. You're about to start reading the book you just bought. You're very excited. You open the book and suddenly you see yet another double diamond. And I cannot emphasize how many times hiring managers sees this double diamond in the portfolios, but in different colors. That's the gist of it, right? A lot of hiring managers see double diamonds over and over and over and over and over and over again, but just in different colors. You don't want to tell that boring story. Nobody is going to be excited to see yet another double diamond. Again, remember, we want to tell an intriguing lessons from what we did. So optimizing for the titles means that instead of focusing on the steps you followed, focus on what did you learn. Flip it from, again, reporting what you did to what you learn. And an example B here, you see a pretty good idea, or it covers this idea pretty well by telling literally what they have learned from research. The research is a secondary title here. It doesn't really optimize by telling like we did research. It implies, but it leads with an insight that you've learned. For example, here with just a little tiny sentence, we do not sit together, question mark. It implies a lot of context. It implies that probably sitting together, it's probably airplanes. They're probably, and especially if you did the context that it's for airplanes, booking tickets in airplanes, by saying we do not sit together, it's a very, very cool insight that probably leads with lesson and the design explorations afterwards, right? So you want to have those catchy titles that tell what you learned. Insights now. So a lot of us have this habit of throwing a bunch of screenshots from our process, right? We have this tendency of, look, I did my secondary research, I did my insights mapping, and here are all the beautiful outputs I have designed or delivered. But again, they're not really telling the story. And in today's market, it's so important that you optimize for visual scanning. And instead of just throwing an evidence of what you did, focus on designing your screenshots, focusing on designing your insights or lessons you have had through this project. So yeah, again, instead of screenshot, design it, spend extra time, but 100% it will be worth it because hiring manager will be quite interested and intrigued to experiment or even interact with what you have learned here. Think about user experience. You're designing for user experience, you're applying for user experience role. You want to make sure that user experience for the hiring manager is great. Designs. Another habit consequent after the Miro boards, many of us are just, again, using this mapping of like, look how many screens I have designed. But numbers do not care so much. What really is important for hiring managers is the way you think about it, is the way you go through the process, is the way you go from A to Z, how you iterate, how you make critical calls, what do you prioritize, and why. Much more interesting to read and than to see a bunch of screens you have designed and understanding nothing about them. Much more interesting is to put, for example, consider before and after. Here, this was the original design I did, this is the final design, and here's a bunch of explorations, and here is a bunch of reasons why I choose this flow, right? And it kind of walks hiring managers through their thinking style, through their thinking, critical thinking, basically, right? It leads with a lot of thoughts, not just an intention, not just here's the design, enjoy, right? Because it doesn't really tell what and why. And finally, testing and iteration. Instead of again telling, we did test, we tested with 10 people, here are the bunch of insights, lead with a visual. Instead of saying, I did so many user tests, you can literally say what you've learned. And here's a good example by Anya, who is a community member. She didn't mention how many users she have had in the interview or how many methods she used in the interview. She basically just said, before we have this, and after we have this, and this is based on the feedback. Literally, her insights lead with the basically it leads by saying that they did the testing to figure it out and to iterate on this. So you're really prioritizing the interesting part for the hiring managers who want to understand how you think, how you make decisions, what's your critical thinking like, and they want to see that you did testing and what you've learned from this. With just before and after, quick method, quick tactic, you can already imply you did research. Imply how many insights you've learned and really whether those are good insights or it was just for sake of testing, and see the iteration and whether it made sense based on these problems, right? And finally, the results. So in the results, we have two pieces or two kind of components. First being the impact, second being the reflections. Now, impact, clearly one of the most painful topics for many of us. Many of us work in the companies that are not UX mature, or at least business UX mature. They don't measure anything. They just design without understanding why and what we're doing. That's normal. Many companies are not UX mature. It's almost like a norm right now. Now, instead of focusing on, okay, I didn't have numbers, so I'm doomed, start thinking about the intention. Okay, the company didn't provide you enough context to understand why you're doing this, or maybe there was no measurement in place. It's all right. You still want to show you're intentional designer. You're not just taking orders, but you understand why you're doing this. So we did this redesign. So what? For example, if you did the redesign of the landing page, what was the point? Was it just a whim of the business owner, or was there a problem and you needed to improve the trust of the web page? The branding was the problem. We needed to align with the branding for the sake of, I don't know, correct message. So think, what's the intention behind the redesign or whatever feature you're shipping? Is it to unblock the business? Is it to capture new markets? Is it to improve usability problems? Or is it to innovate? Whatever is the reason, what was the point of it? Focus on the outcome, not just measurable insight or measurable like metrics. Metrics is good, it's great. It usually leads with a very solid evidence. But if you don't have those, you're not doomed. You can think about the impact of your work anyways. And here is a good example by Josh Matteo, who basically saying that, okay, what we did here was not necessarily a redesign. What we did here, we built the shared perspective and design so we can now have a better brand vision and feasible product at scale that matters, but not maybe in a specific metrics. And learnings, especially if you're a junior designer, you have to have the learning section or reflection section, something like that. You must mention what did you learn and what will make you a better designer. And it shouldn't be just, I followed the double diamond process that it is. You really have to reflect a little bit on what did this project teach you? What are the lessons that you will carry on in the next projects? Because if you're not having a growth mindset, especially as a junior designer, nobody wants to have the designer who just constantly repeats and perpetuates the same mistakes. You want to see, as a hiring manager, typically, you want to hire somebody who will grow so you can nurture them, you can give them the right opportunities. And if somebody will be stagnant and will not be able to grow because they don't have the right mindset, then it's a very big risk for hiring manager to hire someone like this. So you must show the growth mindset insights as well. And finally, there was a lot of things here, but I would like to walk us through the key takeaways for today and kind of give you what you need to remember from today. So first things first, remember, we are designing in a very competitive market today. You need to design for a busy hiring manager persona. Somebody who has no time, they have only this amount of time, like a little tiny slot of 15 minutes and a bunch of coffees, and they're stressed. They don't have bandwidth to think about your case study in details that we spend. We spend months and months building those case studies. They have seconds to read it. So how do you optimize your case study for that experience? Optimize for bookstore experience. Make sure your portfolio stands out on the market. It's intentional, it tells story, it captures their attention with visuals, as well as it shows your thinking through the titles. And of course, I think you already understood by now, we don't want to report our processes. We want to tell capturing stories. If you're interested in more examples on how you can tell stories visually, especially because I highlighted today that visuals are super important, you don't want to overwhelm them with screenshots, you want to tell them what's the point visually. If you're looking for different ways to tell the story visually with infographics, you can scan this QR code right now or screenshot it, whatever works for you. I'm going to stop here for a second so you have a moment to screenshot it. And inside of that file, Figma file, you will find a bunch of examples of how other designers in the market did that, what works, what doesn't work, some really good ideas there, as well as for the bios and the thumbnails. And if you are looking to get hands-on, for example, you would like to practice what we have discussed today, not just theory, but you would like to learn how to do this, you would like to understand how to build the right story structure for your project, you're invited for a storytelling workshop that will be happening on the July 30th, which is Wednesday. It should happen at around noon time for US, evening time for Europe and India or Asian countries. And there is a small fee there, but we just usually do this for the sake of showing up because a lot of people don't show up for the free events. So you're invited in this workshop. What you'll be able to do will basically go through reflection of this story arc. I will challenge you to reflect on which story pieces you would like to put in your portfolio, how do you want to frame them, and how to shape your story so that it stands out. So we'll start with a lot of reflection, so you have a whole core story structure that you can now use. And with ChatGPT, of course, play a little bit with copy. You'll have a bunch of resources to play with the copy as well as with the visuals. And that is it for today. Thank you, everyone who have joined and who have listened to it. I'm now very open and curious to see any questions, and hopefully we have time to go through them.
Yeah. So I'll stop sharing my screen and head back to the question and answer section that we have. So what I'll do is I'll reshare my screen. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll try to see if we have any questions.
I see that there was a problem with the screen sharing. Was it fixed at the end?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good.
It was
Good.
there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so what we'll do is we also have recorded the session. So after this session, we'll be providing those recordings to the website that we have for the world tour. So if you see there was an issue, you can also go through it again, like through the recording as well. So if you have any questions, do post it over here. So what we'll do is we'll also pick a lucky winner from the Q&A section. So we'll be getting a $50 giveaway, and Anfisa will be selecting that attendee as well. So I think we have a question over here. What if our portfolio projects are from project briefs like Sharpen Design? How can we state the impact and before and after and testing?
Great question. And again, apologies for the technical issues. I had no idea it missed, but I'm pretty sure we will also be able to provide the slides so you can see the examples there. But luckily, at least we have covered some examples from the projects. I thought that was the most interesting part, so apologies for that. As for the question, so the project briefs. I highly don't recommend this unless you want to experiment with the vibe coding, for example. You want to just test the ground with like current AI tools, for example, just to show the vibe code and literacy and that you are proactive and keep learning as a growth mindset. But definitely, I would not encourage you to do this, even if you're a junior designer, if you're just transitioning to design. I personally would not encourage you to do the project briefs. A reason why is mostly because it's very visible that it's not a real project. And think about the market today of juniors. After the COVID, a lot of people started switching to design because it was, remote world, and a lot of companies, like a lot of people realized they could have a good money and started switching to design. And then boom, we have tech crisis. A lot of people lost jobs. Experienced people lost jobs. And so now we are having this bubble of people who still juniors, or and then people who have experience competing for the same roles. And if you and those people who typically in the last 5 years, they already have some experience. They have been working either through the hackathons with startup teams, or they were, for example, also I don't know, did some freelancing, or they actually worked in the companies, agencies, and products. These people would have advantage in front of you. And while you might have a really clean UI, you will not convince the hiring manager that you have the right soft skills, that you're a good communicator, problem solver, you're collaborative, etc., etc. So having those briefs in your portfolio, they're risky because you don't communicate those important skills that hiring managers are looking for in the junior designers included. And today, junior designers find ways to collaborate with people, to have business impact in whatever way possible, that also show resourcefulness, and they stand out on the market. And while the before and after impact, I wouldn't worry about, to be honest, because again, you can measure things. You can use quantitative unmoderated tools like Useberry or Maze.design to measure your before and after. You can measure, for example, time per task, and that usually correlates with usability, etc. So you can measure and correlate a lot of those usability metrics with the business impact. That is not the problem. The problem is a lack of collaboration skills and problem-solving skills on real business challenges. When technology doesn't work, that timelines are or resources are not met, where the client wants something different, when you have hard stakeholders, etc., etc. That's the interesting, juicy part that by working with project briefs, you won't be able to tell that story, basically. So the story will go, again, quite flat. You will only be able to impress people with the visual attention to details, visual skills, but not really product thinking skills. If you're targeting early stage agencies or like agencies who work with early stage startups, I think that could work. But if you're applying to product companies, you would like to work even with the startups, then it might just not make a cut, unfortunately.
Thanks, Anfisa. We also have
Yeah.
another question from British here. There are too many opportunities for people starting their careers like without experience. How can we stand out when applying to internship or entry jobs? As someone that just finished a bachelor's, should we create projects and focus on portfolio in the area we want, or is good at to pick a few projects from different areas we studied?
Yeah, definitely. I will also, I see that in the chat there was somebody asking for the QR code again. I will send a separate QR code for the Figma board. I'll need to find it in a second. And here is another QR code for the workshop. Now, again, for the internship, it's a kind of a similar question regarding like standing out on the market. The good news, I have a good kind of good perspective, and of course it's still challenging, so I don't want to dismiss it. But the good news that while it is very challenging, a lot of juniors still struggling, and there is a big competition today on the market. The good news that especially last year, with the help of AI, I see so many companies started hiring juniors, so the opportunities are actually growing a lot for juniors today. And that's a good news because again, today with AI, you have this competitive advantage. And while the market is still sort of in tech crisis and still kind of recovering, recession happening, not happening, who knows, the opportunity for you, for companies understand that junior designers with AI are now a good qualifiers for like kind of middle product designers, like middleweight product designers. So they would like a lot of companies today take this as an opportunity to pay less, but still get good enough results. And I have seen, for example, in the community recently, we had mostly junior designers finding jobs, not senior designers, because for juniors, the bar is so high today. It's crazy. Like like senior designers are threatened, to be very honest, because the bar is growing every day, and if you have a demanding job and you have no time to, for example, learn AI tools and catch up and be more effective, collaborate more effectively, become product person, become an engineer in a way, you're missing out, and then you are not meeting the bar of senior design today in the market. And so junior designers, with the help of AI, actually having the competitive edge. And I also see a lot of companies are getting to hire the junior designers or internships in the community. Again, like I said, many people recently found job, and it gives me a good potential, like positive signal, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen automatically. You still have to put a lot of work. There's still going to be an imposter syndrome. There's still going to be doubt, and there's still going to be fears, and it's hard to dismiss those. These are the real things that happen every day to people, but again, proactivity, intentionality, practicing, asking for feedback, improving, like that's what we're doing basically in the community. That's the whole point of the community, to kind of help people to continuously grow and learn skills where they're looking for a job. Because if you don't do anything, then you're not growing, and there is no way you're improving your chances to stand out. Especially with AI today, you can literally grow much faster. So it's a good thing, but to stand out, you have to be proactive. You have to find opportunities. You have to find, for example, NGO projects. You have to join those hackathons. Like Ball.new recently, the vibe coding tool, had a hackathon, like a global world hackathon, and we have done 2 projects with the teams. We split into 2 teams with like 6 people in each team, and they worked on design projects. Now they could put this into portfolios to show that they have been able to learn AI coding, as well as new case study collaborating with designers. So you have to be proactive, but it comes from a lot of learnings and nerves, and it's unfortunate, but it's a reality today.
Thanks, Anfisa.
The internship, I see the follow-up for Patricia. Just
Yeah.
quickly reply to that comment. uh, I think, again, internship, it's a concept on how it works, like how that works in your country. I'm assuming you might be from Portugal, so internship might be legally like bound to certain, yeah, good. um, could be legally bound to certain like university degrees or something. Like I know that in France it is like this as well. Our community member had a problem with that. You might not need to look for internship. You might need to look for the junior roles that don't really care. I mean, of course, it depends on the country. Some countries care about the university degree, but many companies don't. And now with the remote world, a lot of companies don't care so much about this. So you have more opportunities. But yeah, I think you might target like junior roles directly. It's just that you might have to skip. Internship is not mandatory. It's just one of the opportunities to get into the junior role. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
Go
we
ahead.
we also have one more question from Vanshika regarding this, like how many case studies we should keep in our portfolio as a fresher.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Again, think about user experience and critical thinking. If you're a senior product designer, you want to be very, very selective about the case studies. You don't want more case studies, you want less, but thoughtful and targeted. So if you know you're applying to, for example, fintech, or for example, medtech, those are very regulated markets, very legacy and regulated markets. So those are the skills you want to show in your portfolio. So you don't need to have like 10 projects. You want to have 2 projects to just focus on those skills that are important for those contexts. Or in startups, maybe sometimes you have to have more projects, just because startups typically look for various skills. They look for your agility, your way of like working with pitch decks, with MVPs, with iteration. There could be multiple rounds of like product shaping. And so in the scale up, in startup, sorry, you might have a bit more projects. But again, it doesn't mean, I would not, like, there is no necessarily number that you should follow, but I would say from 2 to 4, not more than that. And the rest, for example, you have more projects that you still like to show, like you're experimenting, you're doing hackathons, you like to, learn new things. You can still have them, but I would more move them more for like, for fun, I do these things, not like here are the in-depth case studies. Again, nobody has time to read 4 case studies. You want to have like 2, 3, 4 selected case studies. And if you're a junior, of course, you just want to have 2 really good case studies that show your thinking and potential, because juniors are hired for potential.
Yep. So we have another question from Uttam, like how did you measure the success or impact of your design? What metrics or feedback did you use, and what were the outcomes?
Oh, that's a very general question. Like, I'm in design for like 13 or something years. So it always depends. There's a lot of different projects that I can talk about here. I guess, I mean, honestly, it depends. I cannot even emphasize it here. It depends on the project, on the resources, on the intention. You can think about the projects with, like, there is always, every project we do is part of the business growth. Every business, they have stages of growth. They have startup stage, then they have scale up stage to grow massively, then they have pre-IPO stage, post-IPO stage, and then on the enterprise for like 10 years on the market and more. Each of those products have different set of challenges. In the startup, you're looking for 0 to 1 product market fit. So you're looking for the first sustainable revenue that supports the growth. Once you start growing, company invest in people. They are hiring actively. They are building product sets, all right? They're building more features to meet the, and so in the scale up, maybe the most common thing would be meeting the market parity or feature gaps, or enabling to get more customers in certain areas. So then the project types and then metrics are based on that, right? If you're meeting the feature parity, or if you're trying to, improve usability, that was a problem from startups or something, right? These are different types of projects, and they consequently inherit what kind of metrics you should be measuring based on the challenge that your business is currently in. In the innovation stage, so when you are like enterprise, you've been in the market for 10, 15 years, your business model starts becoming a little bit old school, and the startups, cool new guys startups, are catching up. So then the company goal is to innovate, stay relevant, like Airbnb right now. You can see them constantly reinventing themselves. They're changing the visual style, they're changing the product offers. And so that's the new kind of project types that they're working on and measuring. Obviously, are we meeting the expected results? Is the business meeting the expected results? And we, as design discipline, we still need to follow the business growths kind of needs, and then all the metrics are based on that. So it could be usability, could be growths, churn, other metrics, could be funnels, could be onboarding, activation, etc. There could be millions of metrics I could mention here, but I don't think I have time for that.
Yes. So one last question I'll take over here for one more. Like, do you think showcasing why you rejected certain design directions is as valuable as what you shipped?
Yeah, in fact, yeah. Of course, you don't want to overwhelm with too many details. If it was constant rejection, it might just become too much to read and too much details. I would, again, be selective, like shape your case study, be intentional. What are you trying to communicate? Always reflect. Is this going to show the depth of my thinking? Is it the best 3 variants I have come up? Like, don't show them 10 variants. Well, unless it's like a specific card, like I was showing in examples. I don't know if you have seen it, but mostly you want to show like a depth of your thinking. I explored these 2 concepts. This is why, and this is why I chose this one. Like, rejection sometimes makes sense, especially if you have a really good story to tell. For example, I strongly believe in this concept. It would fit like business needs, user needs, scalability needs, design system needs, blah, blah, blah. But our, for example, product director, or for example, some stakeholder was pushing us against it. We had some sort of arguments, and this argument won, right? So you might want to give them extra piece, but that's an interesting piece because that's a reality-based piece. A lot of companies go through the same arguments, and sometimes prioritizing that actually makes your story stand out. But yeah, again, you don't want to overwhelm them. So we have to balance between telling a good story, but not too many details.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap up the Q&A, and it's time to select lucky winner, Anfisa. If you can just
Yay!
uh, from one of the questions that people asked, that will be great. And we'll give them this gift card in the DM, and we'll share this. This is actually a gift card from the Figma store that we have. So you can select a $50 product that you like, and it will be shipped at your place with the free shipping that we have with this coupon.
Yay! Alrighty. Do I have to select? I would
Yeah,
like to split
yeah.
between everyone.
Yeah, I think you have to select. We have Uttam,
Okay.
Anmol, we have Patricia, and we have Vanshika as well. So from
Okay.
four, I mean, you need to select one.
Okay. I guess we can go for Patricia with like the
Yeah.
internship question. Yeah.
So
Apologies. I would love to give everyone the
yeah,
card.
no problem. For this year, we just have one, but we'll make sure we have more for the next sessions that we'll be having. So, Patricia, do DM me your Twitter account or Instagram or your email ID so that I can send you those details of the gift card.
Yay! And for those who will stick for a second, I will send you guys the link
Yeah,
to the board
sure.
with like examples. Just give me 1 second. Actually, you know what? It will be maybe easier if I scan myself and send you the link. Okay.
Yeah, I already shared the PPT link over here, Anfisa. So I think people might
Okay.
have access to it and they might be able to use that link.
Okay. I anyway still have the link, so I can drop it in the chat so
Yeah.
people don't have to hunt it down. Okay. Just copy in the link here. Copy, paste. Okay, there you go. Hopefully it's a correct link.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah,
Anfisa.
it should work. Perfect.
So we have this again other sessions lined up as well. The next session is Design for Trust, and it's been hosted by the Athens Friends of Figma community that we have. So do scan this QR code, and you'll be able to register and see the other schedules that we have for the other events, and you can participate in as well as per your ability. So we'll like to have your feedback as well. Scan this QR code, share your feedback. This is a generic feedback that we are gathering from all the chapters that we are doing the world tour in, and it will be a great like uh, info if we get some feedback regarding this experience that you had and how we can improve in the next sessions that we're doing next year. So I'll take a moment over here and let you guys scan. So yeah, these are the chapters that we were doing this together from different communities from different part of the world. So nothing great is made alone, and I think this is the great example of collaboration and events that happen worldwide together in a 24-hour format. So these are the chapters that will helpful on creating this and organizing this as well. So I'd like to thank you for attending this and helping us shape this world tour. And thanks, Anfisa, for taking your time and also dedicating, getting the takeaways and the insights that the people are were looking forward. And I think I've been experiencing your workshops and other sessions as well. So I think this is a was a needed thing that people need these days, designers like juniors or seniors, and how they can make their portfolio stand out with the cutting edge market that we have right now. So I think people should also like sign up for the workshop that you have. It is very helpful. You get more insights over there, and you'll have a one-to-one session as well, like how you can practice the titles and the case studies that you have. So I think will look forward to more information regarding this over there as well. Thanks everyone. I'll sign up from here and let you guys to go and attend the next sessions. Thanks.